presidency of Donald Trump had a number of historical moments and firsts, most of which were incredibly controversial. But one of the things that will invariably define his legacy going forward is the last major first of his tenure. On January 13th, 2021, Donald Trump was the first US president to be impeached twice. Impeachment is the US Constitution's remedy for public officials needing to be kicked out of office. But what made Trump's impeachment interesting was that it came when his term was almost over. There was a week left in his presidency when the articles of impeachment passed the House. The fastest impeachment trial ever was Trump's previous one back in January of 2020, spanning 21 days. There was no way that he'd stand trial in the Senate before Joe Biden took the oath of office and replaced him as the president, meaning that Donald Trump's presidential impeachment trial would be held after he was president. Many members of the GOP have been arguing that this decision to impeach is disunifying and exacerbates the nation's divisions. And while, believe me, I have words to say about them, and many of them are angry, there's a second allegation that they're also making that I think we should clear up. One that I can address with a bit more knowledge, and also, honestly, a bit more equanimity and restraint. They claim that the second impeachment trial is not only unprecedented, but, in point of fact, unconstitutional. And this actually reflects a question that I think many people around the country honestly have. So today, I want to address this argument and also answer the broader question of if and when a former president can be impeached. So, first and foremost, I think it's important that we clarify something real quick. Former President Trump is not facing impeachment. He's already been impeached. What he's now about to face, and what many in the GOP are objecting to, is what comes after impeachment: the trial. I've talked about impeachment on the channel before, and if you're interested, I highly recommend checking the link down here or in the doobly-doo. But to give it a quick skim, impeachment is commonly and erroneously used to describe a two-stage constitutional process, which actually includes impeachment. First, the House of Representatives votes on articles of impeachment. This is loosely analogous to an indictment in a criminal trial, except it doesn't have to be because a specific law was broken. It can be for whatever Congress decides fits the bill. The second part is the trial, where the Senate is analogous to the jury, albeit a jury that poses questions to witnesses that are really more political statements and posturing than anything, but I digress. There is a prosecution spearheaded by an impeachment manager from the House of Representatives and a defense on behalf of the impeached president. This trial is whether or not the president will be convicted and face punishment for the charges that he was impeached on. Here's where we get into the admittedly weird part of this impeachment, and the reason why it's weird can actually be best articulated by what the Constitution says about the process, or at least the relevant parts to the discussion. From Article 1, Section 5, the House of Representatives shall choose their Speaker and other officers, and shall have the sole power of impeachment. From Article 2, Section 4, the President, Vice President, and all civil officers of the United States shall be removed from office on impeachment for and conviction of treason, bribery, or other high crimes and misdemeanors. And also from Article 1, Section 2, judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than to removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law. So, wait, what's the point then? Doesn't the Constitution say that the punishment for impeachable offenses is removal from office? Biden's now president. Trump's been removed thanks to the election. So I think it's important to remember that the charge that Donald Trump's been impeached on was inspiring a mob to try to prevent that removal and violently overturn the results of said election. But even if it wasn't, the point is actually right here. Shall not extend further than to removal from office, comma, and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. This is going to sound just so incredibly pedantic, but that comma's doing some serious heavy linguistic lifting. Legally, removal and disqualification are two separate outcomes. And that isn't, just my opinion or anything. That's actually been the presiding political precedent since 1862. In 1862, Wes Jeffreys was impeached by the House for sedition and rebellion. Jeffreys was a federal judge in Tennessee and then went and joined the Confederacy. So yeah, definitely fit the bill for high crimes and misdemeanors. After his conviction, Congress was deciding what to do with him. They also wrestled with whether or not the two are actually separate charges. From one senator at the time, I have very serious doubts whether it is a double question, whether the whole is not one judgment. I'm not sure, but when the Constitution says that it shall not extend further than removal and disqualification, it necessarily follows that it shall extend that far. Could you impose that latter part without the former? Could you decide that he should be disqualified to hold and enjoy any office, honor, trust, or profit? If each proposition is independent, it must be able to stand by itself without affecting the other. I am by no means satisfied that these are independent propositions. In response, another senator pointed out that if they were joint questions, it risks allowing someone dangerous to remain in office simply because people do not believe that they should be banned from holding office for the rest of their lives. Joining the two acted as an unnecessary constraint on Congress's decision-making. And ultimately, the Senate agreed with the latter. The president pro tempore said on that matter, "In the judgment of the chair, removal and disqualification are separate and divisible propositions." In fact, this separability was reinforced as recently as the 1990s. Alcee Hastings was a federal judge in Florida who was impeached for bribery in 1984. His sentence included being removed from his judicial position, but he ran for Congress in 1992 and won a seat, which shouldn't be possible if impeachment automatically meant both removal and disqualification. The issue was brought to the courts, and the judge ruled that Hastings holding a congressional seat was permissible. The record does not reflect any specific action taken by the Senate to disqualify a defendant from future office. Prior judicial opinions, the rules of the Senate, and the examples of the Ritter and Archibald opinions all support the defendant's positions that the issues are separable, overwhelmingly. Now, because we're talking politics and not transcendental capital T truth, it is possible that other judges will rule differently. If they do, they will probably rest on Hamilton and other framers whose writings framed the two as inseparable. But theirs was not the only opinion of the day, and would actually go against the prevailing precedent as it's understood today. Okay, fine, he could just be removed, or he could just be prohibited from holding future office. But again, doesn't it seem like he has to currently be in office for all this to work? Well, there's a historical precedent that answers that question too. In 1876, the House tried to impeach Secretary of War William K. Belknap. In a cheeky maneuver to avoid the punishment and a direct test of the theory that only sitting officers can be impeached, Belknap resigned minutes before the vote to impeach him actually happened. And then the House decided to just impeach him anyways. And the Senate decided that it still had the jurisdiction to try people no longer in office. This coming, by the way, from the Senate's official website, so this isn't like secret arcane knowledge or anything like that. Belknap was earnestly tried in the Senate, and a majority of senators voted to convict him so that he never held public office again, but they fell just shy of the 2/3 votes necessary for a conviction, ultimately leading to his acquittal. So, does this mean that any former official can be impeached? Or, as GOP Senator Lindsey Graham asked Fox News recently,
the radical left, if you can impeach a president after they're out of office, why don't we impeach George Washington? He owned slaves. Where does this stop?
Now this is kind of a moot point since Washington is ineligible for an additional term thanks to the 22nd Amendment prohibiting him from serving more than 2 terms in office, and the fact that he's been dead for nearly 200 years. But aside from that, could a former official be impeached and face conviction after they've been out of office? There is some disagreement on this point. Well, I mean, there's disagreement with everything that I mentioned so far, even if it is the prevailing precedent, but there's more disagreement on this than the other stuff because there really haven't been enough cases of impeachment in the nation's history to fully flesh out hypotheticals like this. Some scholars believe that, yes, former presidents can be impeached for the acts they performed while in office. They can point to historical precedent in other countries that was at the top of the mind of the founders as they came up with the idea of impeachment at the convention. Others think that it's only limited to people who had articles drawn up against them while they still held their official position. Among other things, they can point to official House rules on who can be impeached, which takes the time to specify that it can impeach people who have resigned office, but makes no effort to say that former officers can be tried after the fact, even if it was to prevent them from holding other offices or receiving things like pension benefits. Personally, I fall more in line with the latter position, but full disclosure, this isn't my area of substantive expertise, and I did want to acknowledge that there is another viable possibility. In either case, because Trump was impeached while he still was in office, the question becomes moot. Among legal scholars, it's a pretty uncontroversial position that Trump can be convicted since he was impeached while he still had office. Although, I mean, uncontroversial is probably the wrong word because everything about this is controversial. Everything about the last 5 years has been controversial. I'm tired, man. Now, it should be noted that some people believe that what I just described doesn't amount to much because the precedent is different. That the precedent that I've talked about only applies to judges and administration officials because reasons? Look, that position is on very shaky ground because the Constitution makes no mention that the various classes of impeachable officers have different rules and provisions. When you add in the fact that impeachment cases have often used the impeachments of other dissimilar positions as precedent, the tenuousness of the whole "but it's different when it's the president" defense really reveals itself. At the end of the day, there's a good chance this will go to the courts, and when it's there, it's possible that they'll rule that the president is different because he didn't resign or whatever XYZ reason here. But the most likely outcome is that they'll apply the existing precedent that Trump can be convicted and be precluded from holding office in the future. Actually, more likely than not, they'll dismiss the case because the courts have ruled previously that impeachment is a whole political deal and the courts have no standing in it, but, you know, apart from all that. I'm curious to see what you guys think about this, so drop some comments down below. I'm looking forward to reading all of them and responding to a few at the end of the next video. And if you enjoyed this video, I hope you consider liking it and sharing it, and if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more videos on our endlessly fascinating social world. A huge thank you to the supporters of the channel on Patreon, including Joel and Tim Northrup, who are this video's research assistant. This video was only possible thanks to my subscription to the Washington Post, where I was able to read an incredibly informative article by Lawrence Tribe, a law professor and expert on impeachment. This video was heavily influenced by that article and used it as a springboard for my own research. And I wouldn't have been able to read that article if I couldn't afford the subscription, and that all would have been possible without your support. If you'd like to contribute to the channel, patrons get early content, your name at the end card, or a shout out. So if you're able to help out, you can click the link down in the description or at the card at the end of the video. I really appreciate it. Last time we talked about why the United States has an electoral college system in the first place, and let's see what you guys had to say about that. Omitted asked why the background was naked and noted, like a few others, that my daughter was having some fun downstairs while I was trying to record. As to the background, it's a little better. See, we're moving in the not too distant future and we didn't know when, so I didn't want to put something up just to have to take it back down. But now we have a better sense of when that's happening, so yeah, I'm going to spruce it up a little bit until we go to the new home and new office and new filming set. I'm pretty excited for all that, but it's not for a few months, so I'll add some accoutrements over the next couple of videos. FreeJaffa92 noted that he was taught back in grade school that the main reason that we had electoral college was that the founders feared that the states would all just try to nominate their own people for president otherwise. And he asked if he was lied to, considering that this contrast with what I talked about were the main overarching concerns for the creation of the electoral college. So as a general statement, I don't think you should watch my videos and think that because it contrasts with something else that you saw that either it or the other thing was necessarily wrong. Different authors are going to emphasize and frame different things as the most important based off of their own biases and the things that are interesting them about that topic. We make choices to curate and simplify based off of that. The best route is usually to take as many things in as possible and try to synthesize information across sources. I was looking for things that reared their heads repeatedly in the debates, but there were definitely other factors at play. Although I admit I don't really remember this issue that you mentioned being a foremost concern in either Madison's notes at the conventions or in the Federalist Papers, I don't think that necessarily means that you were lied to, but it is possible that the textbook or the teacher was mistaken on this particular issue. Tim Northrup and Ike Oker-Eke had a really good and in-depth conversation about whether or not the issues could be solved with abolishing the office of the president and moving to a unicameral legislative system. And I'm honestly, personally, really ambivalent toward this because on the one hand, I have a tendency to like reforming current institutions as needed, making me less inclined to like just ditch the whole presidential system. But on the other hand, the last 4 years has been pointing me to some research suggesting that how some, but not all, of the problems that we have could be avoided if the US emulated the political features of other democratic nations. I'm not sold on the argument of removing the president and making Congress unicameral, personally, but I am always open to evidence-based positions, and I always really like when the channel inspires really good and respectful discussion like what happened here. I don't know, I'm just really proud of the community that is surrounding these videos, I guess. That's all the time that I have for comments in this video, but I will be probably responding to them in the actual comment section down. So please keep them coming. I sincerely appreciate the time that you guys take to write down your thoughts and put them down in the comment section. Sources for everything is always down in the doobly-doo, as well as links to his Twitter and the blog. Look forward to seeing you guys out there as well. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. If you want to support the channel, you can do so by commenting down below, by sharing this video, by subscribing to the channel for more awesome social science content. And don't forget to hit the bell, that way you're guaranteed to be in the loop when I upload a new video. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.